The president is trying to shut down the Department of Education and quietly moving its programs to the Labor Department. The man who would run all of it faces the Senate, and Democrats came loaded. Here's the hearing, then the full breakdown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sonderling, good to see you. Welcome. I enjoyed our conversation a few days ago. It's great to see you here. Let me start with something you and I talked about then and that we talked about last time you were before this committee, which is artificial intelligence and the effect that that's going to have on the job market. The St. Louis Federal Reserve recently issued a report in which they said we may be witnessing the early stages of AI-driven job displacement. The IMF, International Monetary Fund, estimates that 40% of jobs, at least worldwide, are exposed to AI, so could suffer from AI job displacement. My question to you is this: what do we need to be doing as a government, and more specifically, what does DOL need to be doing now to be getting our workers in the country ready for the impacts of AI, and maybe more importantly, helping them keep their jobs, use whatever artificial intelligence is going to be integrated into the workplace to improve their productivity and their wages? I mean, should we be able to agree that the goal here ought to be not to lose jobs? We don't want that. We want to see wages go up. We want to see more opportunities for workers. How are we going to get there?
We want to see more jobs in this, and there is the potential to do that. And this is where really this administration is taking this very seriously, both from a national competitive perspective, but also from a workforce development side. You know, we're working very closely with the National Science Foundation and the Department of Education to develop that AI curriculum that China has, and they're teaching them in the second grade, and we're not doing that. But how do we get that curriculum? How do we actually teach? If you teach somebody on AI right now, in 2 months, it may be outdated. So that's really where the partnership of where we're trying to take to get that education, to get that curriculum into the education system. We need to be talking to the employers and the tech companies who are employers who are buying this and the tech companies who are designing this. And that's where the issue has been, not getting that information from them, not having those partnerships and not sharing them. And that's what I'm trying to solve. We're launching the AI Action Work Hub, which is allowing us now to enter into MOUs with both tech developers and companies who are deploying this to, number one, see what the real impacts are, see how these programs are being designed, to backtrack that, number one, into the education system, but more importantly, to make sure that American workers and students have those baseline skills they need. Because right now, you have kids in high school, you have kids in middle school who think they're not going to have a job, and you have employees who think they're going to lose their job. So the fear on both parts is not helping anybody, and to be able to get rid of that fear, we need to have education. To be able to get that education, we need the information from these companies designing it. So we've been able to enter into MOUs, and we want the Bureau of Labor Statistics to take this over, get them that information so they can actually see if it's job loss, job augmentation, to be there to help them on both sides.
You anticipate what I want to ask you about next, which is, isn't it important? It seems to me it's important that we get all the data we can about AI job impacts in terms of jobs it's creating, jobs it is costing, how it is being integrated into the workforce. Senator Warner and I have a bill that would do this, co-sponsored by various members of this committee. But what would be even better is if DOL would do this on its own accord. You and I talked about steps you're already taking.
Correct.
Maybe tell us that for the record. What are you doing in terms of collecting this information that I think is vital for us to know what is really happening with AI in the workforce?
We're trying to control the narrative from the doom and gloom that's out there, which is largely consultant-driven. It's largely tech company-driven, saying we have these products that's going to eliminate 10,000 workers. How does that make the American worker feel? And we don't even know if businesses are actually implementing this or these tools can actually do what they say they're trying to do. So that's where we're really trying to get that information. And what we believe is we're going to see is that AI impacted jobs can potentially make you more productive. It can make your workplaces safer, but we can't get that information yet. So we have MOUs. We're part of our AI action plan, and we're getting that data from Fortune 500 companies. We're getting it from tech companies. We're getting it from unions, and we're going to take that data and for the first time have BLS look at it and say, well, here's where the impact actually is. And more importantly, here's what you need to do, DOL, to get money to the state workforce agencies, to get money through the Department of Education to train those workers. That's never happened before. The second part, we just issued an RFI last week through BLS to have the time study that BLS does include AI. So now they're going to ask people, how much AI do you use at home? How much AI do you use at work? So in the meantime, before we get it from the employers and tech companies, we're going to get it from the American workers who are being impacted instantly, and we'll be able to see what they're doing.
Good. That's good. We need that data. We need it in order to make informed choices, and I think we've got a lot of hard choices to make with regard to AI. I want to show you a picture now related to Amazon. Here's our friends at Amazon. This is what appears to be an Amazon employee. She's wearing the Amazon logo. She's carrying an Amazon box. She's wearing an Amazon hat. She's driving an Amazon truck. She's totally at under Amazon's control, and yet Amazon wants the American people to believe, and more importantly, the government to believe, that they don't have any control over all of this, that Amazon is just a simple franchiser, just like McDonald's, and that these are all, she's independent, the truck driver is independent. This is the most ludicrous farce. Amazon controls all of this, and they're trying to game the system so that they get treated like a local franchisor in Springfield, Missouri, where I'm from, who owns a local McDonald's, has his whole life savings tied up in it. Amazon controls all of this. Here's my point. I know you're working on revising the joint employer rule. It is absolutely vital that the joint employer rule not excuse Amazon's ridiculous efforts to game the system and prevent people like this from being treated well, getting a good paycheck, and getting health care. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. They are one of the richest companies in the history of the world, and they want to be treated like they're a small business. They're not a small business. They're a monopolist. And I urge you to write that rule in such a way that Amazon is treated as they should be treated and that local small businesses are protected.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Mr. Sonderling, thank you. Welcome back. Thank you for taking time to meet with me. We talked a little bit about apprenticeships. The administration has said their intent to expand the number of apprenticeships to eventually reach 1 million.
1 million.
Many apprentices were pulled off their jobs when the administration canceled various infrastructure projects, clean energy projects. I think we do need novel solutions to get more apprenticeships in place. What's your approach to that? How do we dramatically ramp up the number of apprenticeships to achieve 1 million apprenticeships?
Well, it's our goal and the president's goal to get to 1 million active registered apprenticeships. We believe this is the fastest pathway into the workforce, a debt-free way where students can earn while they learn. But we need to get more employers involved in this. We need to get more industries involved in this as we see manufacturing coming back, as we see critical infrastructure coming back, as we see these areas where they're very high-paying trade jobs. We need to work both for the students to understand how high-paying these jobs are. The average registered apprenticeship, $86,000.
No, I get that, and I understand all those arguments. I guess the question I'm asking, and I agree, we've got to persuade parents. We've done this in Colorado with CareerWise and demonstrated it's not that hard. Parents do see that their kids don't necessarily have to go to college and get a lot of debt. They can go and be an apprentice in not only trades, but in banks, insurance companies, all these different other choices. How long do you think it's going to take to get to 1 million apprentices?
We're halfway there. We're almost at 500,000 registered apprenticeships. We've started over 4,000 new programs in this administration. So as we discussed, a lot of this is getting to the parents early in elementary schools, in middle school, saying this is just as an equal path as college, and you need to start, looking at this as a viable option that you're going to make more without the debt. 300,000 more in your career if you're an apprentice than not being in an apprenticeship position. Right. So the numbers there, the stats are there. You don't
have to persuade me. I'm in. All right. I'm
that's
all
my job here.
I'm
supposed to persuade you to like me.
Trying to push for a sense of urgency that we get there faster, and that it's not just restricted to people 18 and over. Right. In other words, 16-year-old kids, 17-year-old kids can work in a bank or work in an insurance company a couple days a week while they're in high school and come back and actually learn things that will make them more successful in their jobs.
And we're working on industry to do that. And that's a very big part of it, of starting earlier, either in a full apprenticeship, in a pre-apprenticeship. That's really how we're going to change the narrative of this and to hit President Trump's goal of 1 million active registered apprenticeships.
Appreciate that. There's been, Senator Hawley, I watched on TV as he'd done a couple of questions on AI, obviously rapidly making its way into all aspects of the workplace. And I think we agree that we need to find ways to support workers as we go into this. We introduced the AI Workforce Prepare Act with Senator Banks and Senator Hassan and Senator Houston on this. And would direct the Department of Labor to assess AI's impact on the workforce. You've also done work, as you've discussed before, on AI employment during your tenure at the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. At one point, you stated that less enforcement we have on the federal level, the better. That's not universally true, though?
Less enforcement on the federal level.
The better?
I said that?
That's what that's what you're saying. When you make a statement like that, sometimes it gets taken out of context. I'm giving you a chance to.
Oh, yeah. No, I believe the federal government plays a very key role in this. And the most important thing we can do is talk to all stakeholders when it comes to AI. And it's a much different world than we're normally dealing with. You have everything from the VCs who support it. You know, they don't want to give money to a startup that's going to discriminate. A startup doesn't want to create a product that's going to discriminate or harm workers. A company's not going to want to buy a product that does that. And ultimately, the consumers, in our case, are the employees. They don't want to be subject to a product that's going to take away their job or discriminate against them. So that's really where I've been working very hard to get everyone to understand that there's long-standing laws, whether it's the National Labor Relations Act from the 30s, the Fair Labor Standards Act from the 30s, the 1960s, Title VII, or even the ADA in the 1990s, that equally apply to technology that's out there today and the ones that they're developing, and their products are not going to work. It's not going to help the American worker unless they build, design, and deploy them in relation to how those laws work. And I don't believe we need new laws from that. We need to advocate for our existing laws and our existing frameworks to apply to this new technology.
Right, and I agree that those existing laws and setting standards, making sure that we have standards that are going to make sure that kids and Americans, people are held safe, and could be, you know, that the tort system will hold AI companies accountable for, you know, damages done to our populations.
And that's what I discussed with Senator Hawley. It's building that trust.
Right.
For everyone to be able to want to embrace these tools, use these tools so we can get the benefit from these tools, we can get the productivity from these tools, we can get the potential safety from these tools, but none of that happens without trust. And I believe in the Department of Labor and the EOC and the NLRB to be able to be a big part of that equation.
Right, and that's a alignment of self-interest. We agree, trust but verify. Anyway, thank you very much. Again, I yield back to the chair.
Mr. Sonderling, thanks for coming before this committee. I wanted to just circle up with you on a question I raised with you in a previous nomination hearing about OSHA. I raised concerns with you about numerous attempts to decrease OSHA's budget, and you had indicated you would review all the budgets within the DOL and ensure that they had appropriate resources. Despite that promise, the past two presidential budgets have included decreases to OSHA's budget on top of also decreasing the workforce. Given this information, how are you squaring decreasing OSHA's budget and capacity with improving workplace safety?
Well, you know, a lot of this relates to efficiencies, and a lot of the historic budgets dealt with office and staffing levels that didn't exist anymore through attrition. So the president's budget related to OSHA allows a few things. One, to account for that, for the amount of workers that have left, office space have less, but also allows us to account for new technology as well. You know, in OSHA, there's a lot of AI and products that we're looking to invest in to make our investigations more efficient.
Those already in effect?
What's that?
Are those tools, AI tools, and other products already in effect?
We're working hard on that. The Mine Health Safety Administration.
The answer is no. They're not quite
using it. But going back to OSHA, we were hiring, and you asked me to look at it, and I did. And we looked at our entire workforce, and our OSHA and our Mine Health Safety Division needed additional workers. We were hiring in that. I believe we've hired over 90 new OSHA inspectors. If you go on usajobs.gov right now, you can apply to be an OSHA inspector. It's a continuing.
I guess the way I would just.
We are replenishing that workforce.
What I would just say is to think through what is it that you're trying to accomplish? What is the mission here? And in terms of being able to do that workplace safety, it's about making sure that they have an ability to inspect workplaces, to be able to check on safety. The AFL-CIO did a report that said it would take OSHA 191 years to inspect every workplace once based on the 2025 data. You were seeing the challenges already from a shrinking workforce. And that was under your leadership that the number of years it would take has doubled. So, you know, I guess I just want to share that with you. Is just like, I get it. We're constrained. We don't have infinite money. But when we're looking at what it is we're trying to do, the goal should always be, you know, how can we make sure that we are responding to the workplace demands to be able to make sure we're addressing those needs. One thing that I wanted to focus in, you and I have talked about AI, workforce, on a number of different places. But there's one in particular I wanted to just check with you on. The Department of Labor has proposed a creation of an AI workforce hub. That's right. And in it, it says that it's going to hopefully more adequately track and respond to AI trends, all admirable. But it also, the description talked about involving partnerships with private AI and training vendors. Right. I want to just ask you, can you commit to this committee for full public disclosure on any vendor or partner selected for this initiative?
It will be on the website, and it's not just tech companies. As we discussed earlier, the entire ecosystem of who it's going to impact in AI are all workers, all businesses, all unions. So the partnership is not going to just be with tech companies. It's going to be with employers. It's going to be unions. It's going to be with nonprofits. Some of them who are in this room here today. So we're including everyone in this. It's going to be completely public who's a part of this. But as we discussed, this is going to be the missing link to get that data that nobody has.
And you and I have talked about how we share that goal.
100%.
Because, we need to know, skate to where the puck is going, how it is that we're trying to address something that has clearly going to have seismic impact on our economy, already has a lot of concerns. And we've talked about how many young people in this country right now are very, very worried about the impact that this is going to have on their chance to be able to get a job after college. We have to be able to respond with urgency, and I think that transparency is necessary. We know there's a lot of money, a lot of involved, a lot of concerns on that front. The last thing I just want to ask you is that, as someone who worked as a career federal government worker before, a non-political worker, I hear from people all throughout the interagency, and look, there are real concerns at every department, including the Department of Labor, about morale, about the status of jobs, and whether or not the people there feel like they can still have the kind of career that they want without a toxic work environment. How are you going to try to restore trust under your leadership at the Department of Labor?
The Department of Labor is for all workers, including federal workers. And they, especially the Department of Labor employees, where I started my federal career as well. I didn't start walking in as a cabinet secretary. I started walking in the halls with them and eating in the same cafeteria. So I think there's a level of trust that they know with me, and that I'm committed to them. They are our workforce. The Department of Labor's workforce has one goal.
I urge you, just in my final seconds here, I just say I urge you to prioritize that if you're confirmed.
Thank you.
There has been just a real concern about just this tiered system, this hierarchy caste system between the politicals and the careers. And I hope you are someone that can go in a different path. With that, I'll yield back.
Mr. Chair, good to see you again, Mr. Sonderling. First, congratulations to the committee. I don't want it to go unnoticed that the Older Americans Act reauthorization passed the Senate floor a couple days ago. We worked on it like a year and a half ago, and it got held up at the end of the last Congress, but it passed out of the Senate a couple days ago. We all worked pretty hard on that. Hopefully the House will act. Mr. Sonderling, your testimony is, as I would expect, very positive about the state of the economy and the Trump administration's accomplishments. People don't like being told everything's great when their lives are telling them otherwise. And I just got to put on the record, a Gallup poll in May showed that confidence in the economy is at its lowest in the last 5 years. And the Gallup poll suggested 76% of American adults think the economy's getting worse, and 20% think it's getting better. So I guess it's getting better for 20%, or they think it is, but to tell 3/4 of the American public everything's rosy and everything's going well, it just doesn't square. There's a punchline to an old joke. What are you going to believe, me or your own eyes? People's own eyes are telling them this economy isn't working. And that was a poll in May, and I would venture to suggest it's gotten worse since. Data just came out that says, for example, Virginians have paid $1.8 billion more in gasoline since the war in Iran began on February 28th than they would have paid had we not started a foolish war and led to the closing of the Straits of Hormuz. And it's not just gas. It's inflation on everyday goods and groceries, and that was the data in the Gallup poll about why people are feeling bad. So I know that folks with the administration are duty-bound, and I would expect, and I probably do the same thing, of putting the best face on the evidence, but I just have to say that the American public is feeling the evidence, and they're feeling really sour about the American economy right now. I noticed yesterday the president restarted tariff imposition, and he started with Brazil because he doesn't like the fact that Brazil is prosecuting a friend of his. Brazil is a nation where we have a trade surplus, not a trade deficit. So it's odd that the president is deciding, I want to put tariffs on Brazilian products when we've got a surplus with them. Here's what I want to ask you about. The Department of Education has entered into 14 interagency agreements, and Senator Murray talked to you about them. Last year, states, including Virginia, reported a lot of funding delays and administrative confusion following the transfer of the career and technical education services to DOL. And months later, the Department of Ed decided to move K-12 and other higher ed programs to the DOL. Now, just the magnitude of these programs, 9.8 million kids in rural schools, 5 million English language learners, 1.1 million students who are experiencing homelessness, 600,000 native students, 26 million kids in schools that are Title I schools, which are about 80% of the school districts in the country. That's all been foisted over onto the Department of Labor. That was not your choice. That was the president's choice. But as the nominee to be Secretary of Labor, can you tell me there's some foundational pillars for the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act? Do you know what those foundational pillars are?
I do not. That's a Department of Education program, but I would, to the extent we have the administration duties to administer that to the states,
Well,
I would
let me-
rely on the career education staff who's housed in DOL now to make
Got
those
you, but
determinations.
let me tell you what the pillars are.
Sure.
Okay? Because this is something that some think should be pushed over to DOL. The pillars of the IDEA are free, appropriate public education, least restrictive environment, individualized education plan, appropriate evaluation, parent-student participation, and procedural safeguards. And these are not minor matters to parents who have kids with disabilities. I have a letter, Mr. Chair, that I'd like to introduce into the record, and it's a letter signed by individuals who served in 9 Republican and Democratic presidential administrations, including President Trump's first term, who were responsible for overseeing the implementation of the IDEA, saying that they do not think it should be moved out of the Department of Education. If I could submit it for the record.
Without objection.
Do you know the name of the program that funds after-school and summer school programs?
That is a Department of Education program. I do not know the specific name, but
The
the
name of
career
that
staff
program
detail
is-
from the Department of Education, I would rely on.
Yeah,
to
the name of the
administer.
program is the 21st Century Community Learning Centers. How about expertise in the Higher Education Act? In your previous roles, have you had to focus on the Higher Education Act?
We believe that higher education and workforce development are linked. We've had some discussions about OCTAE, and also there's a lot of studies done that these programs should potentially be at the Department of Labor because ultimately you go to school to get
in
a
your
job.
experience in the past, have you done work in the Higher Education Act?
I have not, but I would rely on those who have.
That's not a fault of yours. You've done certain things and you haven't done other things. But to take these major programs that affect millions of people and push them over to the DOL, I'll just say, Mr. Chair, I'll just make one long sentence. There's a right way to do reform. Come to the committee and say, hey, look, this is in statute, but there's a better way to do it. So let's work on a better way to do it. The wrong way to do it is to treat the DOE like it's a furniture store and having a discount going out of business sale and hand off pieces willy-nilly to agencies that don't have the expertise to deal with them. And that's my concern about what's happening right now. Thank you. I yield back.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I want to start, of course, welcoming Secretary Sonderling. Thank you for being here as well. I want to start by just chatting about what I consider one of the greatest pro-worker agendas that we've ever seen accomplished over the last 2 years. The Working Family Tax Cuts bill with Republicans-only votes, no taxes on tip, no taxes on overtime, absolutely pro-worker. We've seen great private sector job growth, 600,000 private sector job growth. Because of the president's trade and tariff policies, we're bringing jobs back home, and manufacturing is great again. And one of the big pro-worker agenda I've seen is an emphasis on apprenticeships and workforce Pell Grant. Maybe just speak a moment. Did I miss anything in that agenda?
You did. There's so much. The Working Family Tax Cuts passed by this Senate and promoted by the president has just done so much for the American workers. Most people on TV hear no tax on tips, no tax on overtimes, which is great. But there's so many other beneficial provisions to workers. And you can break it down in 2 ways. One's of how we create more jobs and get more hours. So the 100% deduction on new equipment is allowing companies to buy new state-of-the-art safe equipment, install them, be more productive, take 100% tax credit that year, freeing up money they would be paying in taxes to hire more workers, to give to more overtime, in addition to the depreciation on expanding American manufacturing, no interest on the loans on the cars bought in America. So many other great things on the business side, but really for the workers, you hit the nail on the head when it comes to workforce Pell. And this
Something else, a big priority for you and me, are our tech colleges, our community colleges, and the flexibility in the Pell Grants, apprenticeships. Maybe just speak about the priority and what the future looks like for those.
And also being able to use 529 accounts for vocational schools, for registered apprenticeships that otherwise were locked up in those 4-year degrees. And that's going to allow certificate programs 8 to 15 weeks where we know there's a lot of jobs. And that's been a cost prohibition for a lot of employees because they can't afford those certificates. They weren't able to get financial aid. Now Workforce Pell is allowed to do that. But ultimately, it leads into where the department wants to go to fill all these jobs that President Trump has created is through registered apprenticeships. Getting people out of high school into high-paying, high-skilled registered apprenticeships, working with local community colleges. And we see community colleges as one of the biggest pieces of this puzzle to be able to help employers, help small businesses design the curriculum to get workers right out of high school into the trades and also have them design those courses. So thanks to the Working Families Tax Cuts, we've just seen so many benefits continue to benefit the American worker, not just putting more money in their pocket, but also creating opportunities that didn't exist before. So thank you for...
If Senator Moody can bore us with her gator chomp, I want to give a Go Grizzlies sign for my alma mater, Community College, Butler County Community College, back home that my wife and I both graduated from. We don't have a chomp or anything, but Go Grizzlies. I got a one-off issue I promised I would run by you from our state treasurer back home, Stephen Johnson, a good friend of mine. And I have not brought this to your attention. You're welcome to follow up. But retirement plans lose track of their people sometimes. And a person hits the age of 65, the retirement plan can't find the person. Somewhere 4 or 5 years ago, we decided the state should figure this out. And there was a rule drafted in 2023 that was never finished. And unfortunately, they had a lower cap of $1,000, which is artificially low. I'm asking you to commit to finishing the rules surrounding this, hopefully with no cap, so that states can start working on getting people money back to them.
This is an important issue because you're talking about retirees who have vested in their 401ks but forgot they worked at that company, forgot they ever had it. And it may be around $2 trillion out there of vested retirees who are not being able to find where their 401ks are. So the department is really looking at this. We're looking at ways to work with employers to come to us. We have a lost and found website where somebody can go type in their employer and see if they had a 401k there. But that takes the employer giving us that information. That takes working with the plan sponsors and saying, give us your roles of who your
Will you commit to finishing the rule?
I will commit to that, and we will look at that de minimis exception too. But the most important thing is we need businesses to have a safe harbor to be able to give that information.
I got 30 seconds left. I want to touch ESOPs, franchises, and unions, okay? So I don't know, any thoughts? We want to, Republicans are trying so hard to be pro-union. I was raised in a union town. Just speak what you can do to help union workers back home. What's your vision to help those folks out?
Well, union workers are American workers, and they're also the backbone of our country. So we continue to make policies to make sure that other industries are also getting into registered apprenticeships, which unions have done very well. And I've talked to all the major union leaders, seeing what they do to how they get so many people in the trades, how they get so many people into high-paying, high-skilled jobs. I'm trying to take that model and work with other industries, and they're very open to working together because they want the American workforce to succeed. They want it to be with American workers. And all the new jobs the president has created, we're all going to work together to put the American worker first in that equation. And I see both support from unions and management on that.
I don't have time to ask you about ESOPs and franchises, but we'll keep having those conversations too as priorities. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sonderling, welcome. Glad you're here. I hadn't seen this many gators in a long time in one spot. I think I recognize a few throwing stuff at me when I used to coach down there. I can't think of other than Jordan-Hare Stadium.
Senator Moody doing that.
Yeah, other than Jordan-Hare Stadium and Bryant-Denny Stadium. The swamp, Ben Hill Griffin, is a hard place to play. And I really enjoyed kicking y'all's ass when I came down there, so because of that. But welcome, and thanks for what you've done.
Appreciate
you've done an outstanding job. We're looking for you to continue that. You're a member of Vice President Vance's task force team to try to stop this abysmal amount of fraud and money being stolen from the taxpayers, $100 million an hour, the last I heard. I can't imagine that. And so you're on that task force. Are you working with the states? How are you collaborating with the states to get this done to stop this damn fraud?
So my role on the task force is related to unemployment insurance fraud, and Department of Labor plays a significant role in making sure that there's no fraud, because all fraud is a theft on taxpayer dollars. And what we saw in the unemployment system during COVID time, $135 billion was stolen, gone. Stolen by crime, stolen by foreign actors. Social Security numbers were being stolen. Millions of dollars were going out to people in jail, to dead people. Somebody who was born in the year 2154 successfully applied for unemployment insurance and was able to get it. So countless stories of like that hurts the American workers who actually need that money. So under the Vice President's leadership on the task force, we have the license now to finally stop this. And go after states that are not complying. So I sent a letter to 53 governors and governors of territories basically saying that we are tired of the fraud and we want you to put these measures in for the fraud to stop. And if you don't, then there's going to be consequences, and there's never been consequences before. And President Trump is allowing us to do that. So more importantly, we're telling the states, verify first and pay later. Stop paying first and verifying later, and that's how much money has gone out. So really pushing on the states to get the technology, to verify who they are, and we're trying to help them. We're building a centralized system called unemployment.gov that Alabama is helping us with, and we see, Alabama is an amazing example.
Yeah.
They've really gone after this, and when they had improper payments the last 2 years, they got 100% of it back. They have some of the lowest fraud and improper payment rates in the country because they're verifying. They're going and making sure that person is alive, that person lives in Alabama, that person worked in Alabama, they're going to the employer, this person work for you, or is this a fraudster in China? And they're doing it, and it's showing results. And not only that, they're following up with employers. Is this person even eligible for it? And that's not what's happening, specifically in Democrat states like New York that is still paying $2 million out every single day. So our Inspector General, Anthony D'Esposito, we have a partnership together. So I'm doing the front end side where we're going to make sure states like Alabama has done, put in those controls, and then we're going to go after those criminals. We're going to go after the frauds with criminal prosecutions through our IG. So this is one of the most important things we could do at the Department of Labor is stop the theft of taxpayer dollars.
Yeah, I think AI is going to be the key. I think it's going to be the savior for fraud.
Especially with
there's
ID
no way
verification.
there's no way humans can mentally keep up with $5 trillion a year. We can't do it. I don't care how smart you are. And so we have to have machines to do that, and we got to stop it. I mean, we're $40 trillion in debt. It's ridiculous. And we're talking about AI earlier with Senator Hawley. I'll be hopefully governor next year of Alabama. We're going to start in the elementary school, start teaching our kids AI. We can talk about AI all we want. If we don't teach it, it's not going to work. So we have to learn it at a young age, and we're already preparing for that for young kids in elementary school all the way up through high school. And they have to learn to use it the right way, ethically, and that's the future. Our education system's abysmal right now. It's going to heck in a handbasket. I worked it for 35 years. I know our federal government's being broken because of all this fraud, but we have to be able to educate our kids in this AI.
Education needs to lead to jobs.
Yeah, a couple of other things here I just want to say. We have this 401 plan that we're trying to get through for retirement funds through private equity with cryptocurrency. My bill's called the Freedom Financial Act. We're trying to get it through committee. And what does all this mean for the average American and their retirement accounts if we can pass a bill like this where they can actually get something out of their retirement?
Well, we're working very hard at the Department of Labor to make sure that 401k plans have access to alternative investments, just like union pensions do, just like state pensions do. Right now, the 401k market is largely in index funds, and those workers deserve private assets. They deserve diversification, just like somebody with a pension plan. So this is one of my top initiatives to make sure that there's parity now between the pension system and the 401k system to be able to diversify. For individuals individuals, who just have a 401k to get into those private markets that were previously only for accredited investors. This is how President Trump is going to make America wealthy again, by allowing everyone to democratize that access, allow everyone these opportunities outside of just very conservative index funds. And we're at the department, we don't push one fund over the other. We lay the neutral framework and let the employers decide under their fiduciary obligations which is the best for their employees.
You don't have to answer this question, but I just want to throw it out there. Our H-1B program sucks, okay? Microsoft is firing people and hiring foreign labor, and that's wrong. And we have to hire American workers, and I hope you're on top of that. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
President.
Senator.
Coach, one more important question. What was your lifetime record versus the Gators?
Well,
2001 was very hard for us.
yeah. Now that y'all renamed it Spurrier Field, I'd love to come back down there and kick his butt one more time.
I want to ask you a question about the working family tax cut plan, because in there, for the average family of four in the state of Ohio, for example, they will see a net $6,000 tax benefit versus what they would have seen if the bill didn't pass. What does that mean? It means a $2,200 per child tax credit. It means no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. And I've been to factories where I've talked to one individual who said he was going to save all of his overtime pay for the whole year and use it to put a down payment, help him get his down payment on a home. How much do you think those policies help families and help add people to the labor force because there's more incentive for them to actually work?
As I travel the country, I hear about it all the time. When I go to a restaurant, we hear about how workers are getting more pay from no tax on tips, and then no tax on overtime with more production. The manufacturing index has been up 6 months in a row. We've created new manufacturing jobs every month this year, more overtime. So we really see it in a lot of different ways. The obvious ones is saying more take-home pay from no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. It's the largest, obviously, tax bill of all time for getting more money in workers' pockets. But what I said earlier, they're seeing it in ways a lot of people don't understand. So when that factory can expand, for their American production, that is incentivizing companies who have left the United States to come back. So that's why we're seeing Toyota invest, a new plant, $3 billion to build a Tacoma here. That's why Harley-Davidson is bringing back production to Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. In Ohio, General Motors continue to make more investments. What does that do? They get the tax deduction from that. It's going to be able to create more production lines, and they'll be able to hire more workers and be more productive. So it really helps the economy in much larger ways than just that for that individual that they don't understand. And that's really the benefit of this bill and why it's so impactful and why it's so revolutionary and why it's creating more private sector jobs. All jobs created in President Trump's second term are in the private sector. That's exactly what he promised. And that's going to help those workers on the sidelines and those forgotten workers back into the workforce for American high-paying jobs.
Let me shift gears quickly to career technical education and apprenticeships. Passion of mine, something I've been involved in helping grow. And you mentioned, and there's a need.
Yep.
There's a need. We have construction jobs that are growing swiftly in Ohio. We've added 3,000 manufacturing jobs in the last year, and the apprentices and the talent that comes from this, we can graduate people right out of high school, career ready, go from graduating on a Friday to going to work on a Monday, and then have many of them working while they're still in high school. But here's an insidious thing that's happened to this country for those young high school students if they come from the lowest income families. Many of them can't work while they're in high school. Why? Because their income counts against their parents' income, and many of them are put on the sidelines. And I want to tell you a story. And I want your help with this because I've got a solution called the Upward Mobility Act here in the Senate.
I visited Cincinnati Community College, and I saw firsthand how the apprenticeship programs work in Ohio.
I was with a principal at a career tech facility. He told me about this problem. He said, we have lots of students who can't take these apprenticeships, pre-apprenticeships, work experience because their family would lose their benefits. And I said, how big of a problem is this? And I met a young lady who, as a junior in high school, moved into a trailer on a vacant lot so that she could go to work and her younger brother and sister wouldn't lose their SNAP benefits, okay? And I went and I started asking principals all around the state of Ohio at these career centers. I said, is this a big problem? They said, yes. So we have high school students who could go to work being electricians, plumbers and pipe fitters, healthcare, welding, but they can't auto body. They can't take the jobs because their family would lose their benefits. And so I have the Upward Mobility Act, which would help fix this issue so that students in high school could actually go to work and then graduate career ready and do what we want them to do, become adults that are part of the workforce living their version of the American dream. And so I want your reaction to that, and I would like your commitment to work with us to help solve this problem, to help more of America's youth get ahead in life.
You have my commitment to work with you on that, but I do think there is a parallel to the working family tax cuts. The ABLE accounts, which the working family tax cuts increased the limit for disabled workers to put savings away in, is now allowing people to continue with those benefits that they need for their disability and continue to work, save for themselves, and be able to participate in society. So I think the working family tax cuts has a great example that you've already passed on parallel to the ABLE accounts, but you have my full commitment to helping you with any technical assistance that you need on this.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, this is a tragedy that we have created a poverty trap in this country for our lowest income families and their children. And I hope that this Congress will fix it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Sonderling, thank you for your leadership. You've done a great job in your current role. You're going to be a great secretary. But can you talk for a minute about illegal immigration? It's illegal to hire illegals, yet tens of millions of illegals still find jobs in America. What can the Department of Labor do to work better with ICE to prevent businesses from hiring illegals and to fulfill the mission of ICE?
You know, when you hire illegal workers, you're undercutting businesses that are doing the right thing. And you're undercutting businesses that comply with the law and are complying for safe and workplace conditions that pay properly. Because also too, with whether it's illegals or human trafficking, you see that they don't have safe work conditions, and they're not paid properly as well. So it continues to undercut the market. So from the Department of Labor's perspective, from the agencies that can go after this, it's really holding those employers accountable through the wage and hour division to make sure that there's no human trafficking, that there's no illegal workers being underpaid. Which raises compliance because it disincentivizes those workers those employers, those bad actors to hire illegal labor if they have to do the same exact requirements as if you hire American workers, which is the law, but also working very closely with ICE to make sure that all the laws are enforced, that if we are in places and that we do see illegal labor, that we are working with all of our law enforcement partners at DHS, at Department of Justice, because it is a crime. And the other thing is that those jobs should be going to American workers. And we need to continue disincentivizing employers saying we had to use these illegal labor because we didn't have skilled and qualified labor workers, local workers. And that's what we're really trying to do with a lot of the programs that have been discussed.
Can you describe that formal relationship between ICE and the Department of Labor?
So the Department of Labor and ICE, obviously, we're partners with the Department of Homeland Security, but there was MOUs that were put in place during the Obama administration. They were called deconfliction agreements that if the Department of Labor was there first, then ICE would not be able to get into that workplace. So clearly that employer was violating the law, and the Department of Homeland Security was precluded by memorandum to not be able to enter there if wage and hour or OSHA was there. That has been withdrawn. This administration is the administration of law and order, and we believe that these laws should be applied equally. So that doesn't mean the Department of Labor doesn't have a role in there to clean up that employer. But that doesn't mean ICE and DHS should be precluded from going in there too. So it's working together opposed to saying one agency's laws are more important than the other. And that's what we've changed in this administration. And ultimately, it's going to benefit the American worker because American workers will get those jobs.
I've worked on this committee to end the optional practical training program, or OPT, which gives corporations a subsidy for hiring foreign students in tech jobs. This program prevents young Americans from getting jobs, and Congress never authorized it. Do you have any plans to work with DHS to crack down on an unlawful program like OPT?
We're working with all of our partners in the administration DHS, DOJ on these issues. The program you're talking about allows students on J1 visa to have work experience under the OPT program, which could be up to 36 months. There are benefits for employers like not having to pay some of the taxes as well, and then eventually allows those students to transfer to an H-1B visa, all the way through our perm process, all the way through an EB2 or EBT visa, and eventually get citizenship or a green card. So we're looking at all these programs, and we're looking to see that there's with 900,000 new private sector jobs, the president promised that those jobs would be for the forgotten men and women of America, and all Americans to have that opportunity to get those jobs. So that's our first and foremost consideration when we look at any of these programs. Are they not only being lawfully used, but how are we going to make sure that employers don't need those programs because there's so many great American workers, and that's what we're trying to get to with all programs. But the OPT is a Department of Homeland Security program, but there are labor-adjacent issues.
Understood. On that point, tech companies claim that we need highly skilled immigration to fix worker shortages, but as many as half of recent computer science graduates in America are unemployed today. Is there really a shortage, or do some businesses just prefer cheap labor?
The program under the H-1B program the Department of Labor enforces, we're making sure that within our statutory control, that if you're going to use that program, it's actually necessary and needed. And not only are there not qualified American workers, but also if you're bringing in that foreign labor, it has to be paid appropriately. So you can't undercut, because that harms the people coming in. It harms the program as well. So we have a lot of rules and regulations to make that program. If you're going to use it, you're going to have to pay for it, or else you can actually see what the cost was and then see how much it is to hire and train an American worker. And that analysis wasn't done before because the program wage rates became too low. And that's what we're fixing, and hopefully
Last year, I introduced the Unlocking Benefits for Independent Workers Act, providing a safe harbor for companies attempting to provide portable benefits to workers, ideally to grow access to health care, retirement accounts, and even vacation days for independent workers. So if passed, how do you see this legislation interacting with DOL's proposed independent contractor rule? And would it assist DOL with further rulemaking which theoretically would have the goal of empowering independent workers?
Well, this is a very important issue, and one that I commend your leadership on. We've been talking about this issue for many years, and the issue right now is that you have gig economy workers, working for platform companies that everyone knows the names of, and they love that arrangement, but they also want some benefits. And you see these companies too who want to provide those benefits to employees, whether it's contributions to 401k, whether it's contributions to healthcare, or other benefits such as discounts related to them being able to negotiate in bulk for cars, for equipment and tools. And that's really been prohibited. And what you've seen in that is because of the Department of Labor's regulations, neither side want to create the employment relationship. The gig workers want to stay as independent contractors, and those operators want to keep them as independent contractors. So you have both sides in agreement that we like this business model, but I want to give you benefits and I want to receive benefits, but that's going to ruin that business model due to the Department of Labor's regulations. So what you've seen in the absence of that, states, Democrat states, Republican states coming together and say, we want our citizens to be able to get this. So we're going to do innovative laws. We've seen it in states across the country that say under state law, you can give these benefits, and you can work for 5 different companies and you get little pieces of it from each company and everyone's happy. But under federal law, there's still a fear that may create the employment relationship and ruin these programs and lead to significant litigation or worse, Department of Labor investigations. So this is a very key part of that puzzle to get those workers.
Once I was picked up at the Louis Armstrong Airport in New Orleans by a man who had been working as a Lyft or Uber driver in the Bay Area, California, but decided he'd rather live in New Orleans. Clearly a very smart man. And so, he moved back and he just had to tell Uber or Lyft, hey, I'm moving to New Orleans. My son-in-law was driving. He was in Louisiana, and he and my daughter moved to Miami. Hey, I'm moving to Miami. He could continue to drive. So it seemed like a federal law is needed because even though the states are doing this, what may be allowed in Tennessee would not necessarily be allowed in California.
Correct, and also too under the Department of Labor's regulations, will that be enough too for the companies to actually buy in on this? And we could design rules, we can design regulations, but ultimately, if they need that legislative certainty, that's something I defer to you on. But This is really, again, it's a bipartisan issue. It's an issue that both workers and companies agree on, that they want benefits. They want to be able to build wealth. It's something the Trump administration is really pushing for people to be able to get retirement accounts.
And just to be clear, if we arrange that there's an account that, okay, I work for four different, I'm a DoorDasher, I'm an Uber, and I'm a Lyft, and maybe I'm an Amazon guy, as Holly points out, that they're all paying into an account. Mechanically, this would, the worker, would designate, this is the account where I want my health benefits paid into.
Correct. You'd be creating an account wherein you can work for a lot of different platforms. You own the account, and then other platform companies can give little pieces of the amount of time that you're in there too. So that's the model we're seeing around the country. That's the model that platform companies have come to me saying, we have these resources. We want to provide these resources. Our people want these resources. And that's how essentially it would work. Under some of your proposals, it would be blessed under federal law and would not create the employment relationship under the Fair Labor Standards
Let
Act.
me ask you this, changing the topic. The Department of Labor oversees the Employee Benefit Security Administration, or EBSA, which obviously has a critical role in overseeing employer-sponsored insurance under ERISA. Congress passed my PBM oversight and transparency legislation, and DOL is writing a new rule in this space. Now, clearly, we need to address healthcare affordability. The president is making the affordability of pharmaceuticals a major priority. Kind of tell us, if you will, what DOL is doing in this space.
Well, this is for PBMs. The Department of Labor is the regulator there when it comes to employee health care plans. And this is going to be the most transparent rule, in the history of this industry, where we're requiring PBMs for the first time, to really disclose what that spread pricing is, what those manufacturer rebates are, what the administrative fees are, not to regulate healthcare. That is not. That is for this committee and HHS, but to give that transparency for better negotiations when those healthcare plans come up, and be able to say, now for the first time, because of the Department of Labor's rule, we know what the spread pricing is. We know what, I know Congress is fixing some of this. We know what all the rebates you're getting. We can actually see, how much, our employees are having to pay, and we're going to have to pay for those drug prices, and that allows them to better negotiate. And that's all we can do at the Department of Labor, is give that transparency for the fiduciaries at the company who are negotiating this on the best behalf of their employer. They've never been armed with information about what they're paying on these formulary lists, and now for the first time they're going to have that information, which will lower healthcare costs and allow providers to provide that medication at a much fairer price.
When do you think that rule will come out?
We are working very hard on it. Obviously, the CAA, the amendments came out either like a day or two before the rule proposal went out. So we have to adjust some of that of now what Congress is saying related to some of the unlawful pricing schemes or rebate schemes. So we are building that into the rule, but it is a priority because it's going to save there's stats, billions and billions of dollars for healthcare plans, which is going to drive down the cost of healthcare plans. It's going to allow employers of all sizes to provide healthcare plans they weren't able to because there was so much in the middle that were being made for profit that is potentially going to go away. But again, the pricing is on them. HHS, CMS, all the Department of Labor can do is transparency, and that's our commitment to you in this final rule in all of our programs.
Sounds great. I share your optimism about the rule, and I consider that a tremendous achievement of this committee and a personal achievement.
Let's break down a Senate confirmation hearing for a top job at the Department of Labor, the nomination of Keith Sonderling. 9 senators from both parties questioned him, and underneath the exchanges was one enduring question about the department itself. Who does the Labor Department really work for, the workers it protects, or the businesses that employ them? The honest answer is that it's supposed to work for both, and the tension between them is the whole story. Here's the frame. The Department of Labor has 2 missions that often pull against each other. One is to protect workers, their safety, their wages, their right to organize. The other is to keep the labor market healthy so jobs get created in the first place. A good labor official has to serve both, and this hearing was really a test of how the nominee would balance them. One thing that made this nominee distinctive is worth noting up front. His background is heavy on the future of work, especially artificial intelligence in the workplace. That gave the hearing a modern edge, because the biggest questions in labor today aren't only about old fights over wages and unions. They're also about algorithms that hire, monitor, and even schedule workers. Start with the scale because it explains the stakes. The Department of Labor's rules reach into the lives of roughly 160 million American workers, covering everything from workplace safety to overtime pay to unemployment benefits. Whoever helps run it touches in some quiet way nearly every job in the country. This is not a small or symbolic post. And here's the common ground almost everyone in the room shared. Every senator in some form said they want more good-paying jobs, a skilled workforce, and safe workplaces. Nobody argued against American workers doing well. The disagreement, as always, was about method, whether you get there mainly by protecting workers with rules or by freeing businesses to grow. Both sides claim the same goal. It helps to know the machinery behind the debate. The Labor Department runs the agencies that inspect workplaces for safety, enforce the minimum wage and overtime, run job training and apprenticeship programs, and track the jobs numbers the whole country watches. When senators argue about the department, they're really arguing about how hard each of those levers gets pulled, and in whose favor. There's a bit of history worth remembering under the safety debate. The workplace protections we now take for granted, limits on child labor, basic safety standards, the 8-hour norm, were mostly written after disasters that took real lives. That's the strongest form of the worker protection argument. These rules are not abstract. Many of them are lessons paid for the hard way. Now, the first camp, carried mostly by the Democratic senators, protect the worker. Senator Andy Kim and others pressed on core protections, workplace safety, fair pay, and the right to organize a union. Their argument is straightforward. Individual workers rarely have much bargaining power against a large employer, so the government's rules and unions are how the balance gets evened out. When those protections weaken, they argue, it's ordinary workers who quietly lose ground. Senator Tim Kaine focused on something with unusually broad support, apprenticeships and skills training. The idea is to build clear paths from school into good-paying trades without requiring a 4-year degree. It's one of the rare labor issues where Republicans and Democrats genuinely agree, and a nominee's commitment to expanding it is a fair, concrete thing to pin down. Senator John Hickenlooper, a former business owner himself, pushed on the practical middle, how to train the workforce for jobs that actually exist and keep American workers competitive. His angle was less ideological and more operational, a reminder that a lot of labor policy isn't left versus right. It's just whether the programs are run well and reach the people who need them. So weigh the worker protection case fairly. The evidence that workers have less bargaining power than large employers is strong, and safety and wage rules have a long record of real benefits. The fair critique is that rules can also be blunt, sometimes burdening small employers or slowing hiring. So protection is genuinely valuable and genuinely has costs. Both are true. Now the second camp, carried mostly by the Republican senators, free the employer to create jobs. Senator Tommy Tuberville and others argued that heavy regulation and paperwork can choke the very job creation everyone says they want, especially for small businesses that don't have compliance departments. The argument has a real core. Every rule carries a cost, and if the cost is high enough, some businesses hire less, or not at all. Cutting needless red tape is a legitimate goal, not just a slogan. Senator Jim Banks pushed on labor policy and unions from the other direction, questioning rules he sees as tilting the playing field. And Senator Roger Marshall from rural Kansas raised a piece the coastal debate often forgets. Farm country and small towns have their own labor shortages, and one-size-fits-all rules written for big cities can miss how work actually happens in rural America. So weigh the business case fairly, too. It's true that excessive regulation can slow hiring and hit small employers hardest, and that's a real cost borne by real people who don't get hired. The fair critique is that deregulation, taken too far, removes protections that exist for good reasons, like workplace safety paid for in past tragedies. Flexibility and protection both have a body count when you get them wrong. There's a modern wrinkle that scrambles the old categories, the gig economy. Millions now drive, deliver, and freelance through apps, and the law still struggles to say whether they're employees who get protections or contractors who don't. It's a genuine gray zone with real money and real security on the line, and it's one of the thorniest questions any labor official now inherits. And then the newest fight, the one this nominee is uniquely equipped for, artificial intelligence in the workplace. Here's why it matters to every worker. Companies increasingly use software to screen job applicants, to monitor productivity, and to set schedules automatically. Done well, these tools can be fairer and more efficient than a tired human manager. Done poorly, they can embed bias watch workers relentlessly, or reject qualified people for reasons no one can even explain. The nominee's expertise here is a genuine asset. Senator John Husted and others pressed on the balance, how to capture the productivity gains of AI without turning workplaces into surveillance operations or letting algorithms quietly discriminate. It's a live, unsettled area where the law is far behind the technology, and a labor official who actually understands it could shape how it lands for millions of workers. This is the part of the hearing most about the future. A concrete example makes the stakes clear. Hiring algorithms learn from a company's past decisions. So if a company historically favored certain candidates, the software can quietly learn to do the same, at scale and behind a screen where no one sees the bias. That's not science fiction. Regulators have already flagged real cases. The nominee's job would be to keep the tools useful without letting them launder old discrimination into new code. The honest nuance is that AI at work is neither savior nor villain by default. It's a tool that reflects the rules we put around it. The same system that surveils a warehouse worker could, with the right guardrails, flag unsafe conditions and protect them. Whether it helps or harms depends less on the technology and more on the policy, which is exactly why this nomination matters. One exchange scrambled the usual lines, and it's worth calling out, a Republican making the workers' case. Senator Josh Hawley, a Republican, pressed from a populist angle that sounded closer to the pro-worker camp, questioning the power of very large corporations over their employees. It's a reminder that the old left-right map of labor is shifting. A growing number of politicians in both parties now run against big business and for the worker. On some labor questions, the real divide isn't party. It's big versus small, worker versus boss. And the chairman, Bill Cassidy, a physician who leads the committee, set the tone from the top. A chairman shapes which questions get asked and how the hearing is framed, and a doctor's instinct for evidence tends to push toward practical results over slogans. Watching how a chairman steers a confirmation tells you almost as much about the committee's priorities as the nominee's answers do. So let's total it up honestly across the whole hearing. On the worker side, the case that individual workers lack leverage and that safety and wage rules deliver real benefits is strong. On the business side, the case that excessive regulation can choke hiring, especially for small employers, is also real. And on AI, the nominee's expertise is a genuine asset in an area the law hasn't caught up to. Much of it is bipartisan under the noise. None of this tells you how to feel about the nominee. You can want strong protections for workers and also want small businesses free enough to hire. You can welcome the efficiency of workplace technology and also want guardrails so it doesn't quietly harm people. Those aren't contradictions. They're the permanent balancing act of a labor department that's supposed to serve both sides of the paycheck. Give each side its due. The pro-worker senators are right that leverage is unequal and protections matter. The pro-business senators are right that rules have costs and can hit the smallest employers hardest. And on the future, both should want someone who understands the technology rewiring work. A viewer who holds all three understands this hearing better than one who only cheers a side. And it's worth being clear about what a confirmation actually decides. Approving the nominee wouldn't settle the wage debate, wouldn't resolve the gig worker question, and wouldn't write the rules for workplace AI. It would simply hand one person real influence over all of them. The hearing is less a verdict than the start of an accountability that senators and workers are supposed to keep up for years. And notice how much was actually shared. Apprenticeships, skills training, safe workplaces, and sensible rules for workplace AI drew nods across the aisle. The honest story of this hearing isn't a partisan brawl. It's broad agreement on the goal, good jobs for American workers, tangled up with an old and legitimate argument about how to get there. So where does it leave us? With a labor department that will always serve two masters, the worker and the economy, and a nominee whose real test is whether he can hold that balance while the nature of work itself is being rewritten by technology. A serious country protects its workers and grows its jobs at the same time, and this hearing is a good argument for why that balance takes constant work. Watch two things from here. First, whether the bipartisan promises on apprenticeships and skills training turn into actual programs that reach real workers, or fade the way good hearing moments often do. And second, whether workplace AI gets sensible guardrails while the technology is still young, or whether the rules arrive only after the harm is done. Those answers will come on the record. That is our breakdown. Stay with us.